I'm Chris from Simply Classic. Welcome to my YouTube channel. We're going to take inspiration, creativity to make something our own. And today, that inspiration piece is this gorgeous bag by Patricia Nash. I'm realizing I really like Patricia Nash. She has got some really cool styles, very current, and she's got a lot of details, and I think the details make the difference. So we're going to take this bag, use it as inspiration, and the pattern we're going to use to do that today is the Sassy Saddlebag by Sewing Patterns by Mrs. H. So I'm going to link this in the description below so you can go ahead and grab a copy, and we're going to basically make some tweaks and recreate this bag to make it our own. Won't be exactly the same, but we're going to use it as inspiration. So the first thing that I always do is print a copy of the pattern, print a copy of the inspiration piece. And the reason why I do that is sometimes you need to take measurements. If not, I just like to have it in front of me so I can be constantly referring back to it for inspiration and to see what I need to change or just to refer back to. So whenever I do this, I always look at the bag and think, okay, what do I like about this bag? Well, I really like the grommets. I really like the lacing. I think that is spot on. I like the fact that it has an adjustable strap. I think that is really great. So I'm going to use those things as inspiration. What I don't like about the bag is, and I'm going to put a copy of this up on the screen so you can see it a little better, but there's a side view here, and the bag is only 2 inches deep. And I like to put things in my bag. I mean, I'm one of those people that I tend to stuff a lot of stuff in my bag. So I actually am going to make the bag wider, and what I'm going to do is just use the dimensions on the pattern itself. Other than that, I really kind of like everything about this bag. So the measurement on the bag, the actual Patricia Nash bag, is 11¼ inches wide, 8½ inches high, and 2 inches deep. So like I said, the 2 inches we know we're not going to make it only 2 inches deep. We're going to follow the Sassy Saddlebag pattern for that. So when I look at the bag and I look at the pattern, when I try to decide what pattern to use, I look at the characteristics of the bag that I'm using as inspiration to try to figure out what pattern I can use where I don't have to recreate the wheel. I don't want to start from scratch every single time. The pattern makers are so fantastic, and Mrs. H her patterns are great. So what I want to do is to find something as close as possible. And a couple things I noticed is that this bag, the inspiration bag, has a pocket in the back, a slip pocket. So I was looking for a pattern that had a slip pocket in the back. The other thing is that the flap comes all the way down to the bottom of the bag. A lot of patterns, the flap stops, which you can certainly increase the length of the flap, but if I could find a pattern where I didn't have to do that, then all the better. So that's the reason why I decided to use this bag, is because the flap comes all the way down to the front and it has a back slip pocket. So what I did was all the main changes in this pattern were on the flap. Other than that, I used the pattern exactly how it was. So when you're going through, I'm gonna show you how to make the changes to the flap, and otherwise you just follow the pattern as it is. So you have to piece your flap together when you print the pattern, and then of course cut it out. But what I did was you're supposed to put this on the fold, the pattern piece on the fold. So I did that, and I cut one full piece on the fold. Okay. Now, let me say I'm using an ultra leather, and I'm going to link. It's from Chris Wilson, and it is fantastic. Oh my God. You definitely need to get some of this if you haven't had it so far. If you haven't used it, it's worth buying. I mean, it's great. So what I did, and this is the greatest part of this, I actually used some Decaville light on the back. I put this on my heat press, believe it or not. Now I tested it first, and I suggest you test it first as well. But I was actually able to put it down. It was, I think, 10 seconds on 350 degrees, and it fused great, and it didn't do anything to the leather. It was fantastic. So that's a bonus with this. This ultra leather is fantastic. Okay, so the other thing I did was I then took the pattern piece and I cut 2 separate pieces, but I added 1.5 inches on the side. So if you look here, you'll see that I've got, here it is, I've got half of a flap, okay? And I actually took the pattern, cut it out, pattern piece, cut it out exactly as it is, but I added 1.5 inches on the side that would be the fold. Okay, I didn't cut on the fold, I just added 1.5 inches. Then I cut the Decaville light, the exact measurement of the pattern piece minus the seam allowance. Fuse that on. Put some double-sided tape down the edge here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and fold this piece over. I'm going to show you how we do this. And go ahead and take that down. And the reason why we're going to do this is because we want our grommets to go all the way up and down here. And we need the Decaville light in there to give it some extra stability. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to move the camera and we're going to go ahead and get started. Okay, let me also say that in addition to cutting the flap the way we did, I also cut an extra piece of the main fabric. It is 5 inches by 10 inches. No Decaville on this. And then the other thing I did is I cut, and I'm going to show you how I do this, but I cut a 30-inch long piece by 3/4 of an inch wide. Okay, I put 1/4 inch double-sided tape on each end, on each long end. And then I'm going to show you how I folded this and sewed it. And what that is the lace that's going to get laced back and forth in the grommets. Okay, so those are the other 2 pieces that you need to cut to get to this inspiration bag. All right. Okay, so here's our flap with our Decaville light on there, our double-sided tape. We're just going to remove the double-sided tape, and we're going to fold this piece in. Now when I fold it, really try to pull it tight against the Decaville. Okay. Okay. So this is what we have. I'm going to do that to both pieces, both flat pieces. So the flat pieces, when you cut them, make sure you cut them mirrored so that you have a right side and a left side. Okay, hold this tight. Now, I am not going to sew this down because when I put the grommets in, it's going to hold it. So that way you won't see a line of stitching down the right side of your flap. Now, in order to get the grommets lined up good and straight, what I do is put both of these together. I'm gonna take my ruler, and the very first mark, make sure everything's lined up. The very first, well, actually before I even do that, I'm gonna draw a line 1/4 of an inch down on the flat side. And you obviously want to do something that's erasable. I'm going to use a friction pen. And the reason why is because you want your grommets to line up real well. If you don't, it's not going to look good. Okay. So I'm just going to draw a line there. And I'm going to do 1/4 of an inch. Draw a line there. Okay. So now I'm going to line up. Not only do you want your grommets to be straight, you also want them to be across from each other perfectly so that when you lace it, your laces aren't all wonky. So the first, there's a 3/8 inch seam allowance here. So the first grommet is actually going to go 1.5 inches up. So I'm going to mark 1.5 inches on each one. And then from there, I'm going to go 1 inch on each side. Okay. Inch. Okay. Now, the inspiration bag had, it's hard to tell, it looks like roughly 10 or 11 grommets. The medium size bag for this Mrs. H pattern is a final measurement of 12 by 8 by 4, which is really close to the inspiration piece. So, but the flap isn't quite as long. So we're actually going to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, only 8 grommets, which is fine. But it is going to be a little bit less. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go over to the grommet press. We're going to go ahead and cut our holes, and then we're going to put our grommets in. We're going to do that before we sew the flaps together. Okay, so here we are at our grommet press, and there are 2 different attachments we're going to use. The first one's going to be a cutter. Okay, and all this is going to do is we're going to attach it on here. We're going to put this cutting board, and it's going to cut the holes for us. Now, I got this grommet press several years ago from a company named Rowley, and they're a drapery company. I used to do a lot of window treatments and bed skirts and all that kind of good stuff. And so I bought it then, and it's really come in handy for bag making. Then once we put this, get all our holes in, we have this press, and the press is 2 different pieces. You're going to put one side of your grommet on the bottom, and then this little male, I guess you call it a little male section here, is going to press the grommet. When you put pressure on it, it's going to press the grommet closed. Okay, so we'll do that in just a minute. First thing we want to do is do our holes here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that when I come down to do this, it is right on my dot, and it is on the inside of the line I made. Okay, and I'm just going to press down and to loosen it just a bit. Try it one more time. Sorry, it's a little squeaky. Okay, and we got a hole. So we're going to go through, and we're going to make all of these holes. Okay. So a couple of them we just need to poke through here. Okay, so now we're going to put our grommets in. Okay, we've got so there we go. So let's put our grommets in. Now these are 1/4 inch grommets. So what I'm going to do, I mean grommets are pretty straightforward. You just put the grommet in the hole. Actually, I'm going to change this out first. Okay. So your grommet has 2 sections. You've got a section with a lip on it, and then you have a kind of a flap section. Okay. So the part with the lip on it, I go ahead and put through the hole, and then you're going to lay the other one on top. Now, as you press this down, this little male section here is going to go in the hole, and it's going to take this round part that's sticking up and lay it flat, which is what's going to hold the grommet in place. So as you come down, you just want to make sure it's good and even. So you give it a press, and then voila, you've got your grommet. Okay, so we're going to go through and do all those. All right, and there we go. We have got grommets installed. So we're going to move over to the machine, and I'm going to show you how to sew all this together. Okay, so now that we have all of our grommets in place, all lined up nice and pretty, we're going to go ahead and sew it to our main panel. But before we do that, we need to take that 5 by 10 piece, and we need to either glue it, or if you want to sew it, you can use double-sided tape, however you want, and we're going to put it right down the middle of this flap. Okay, and the reason why is because when we have these on and we lace it, we don't want to see the back side of the back of the flap. Okay. Now, if you want to sew it, you can, but keep in mind that if you sew this down, then you're going to see 2 lines of stitching on the back side of your flap, which really wouldn't be bad, but it's not going to have any stress on it or anything. So I'm just going to use double-sided tape on each side, and I'm just going to double-side tape this down. So I'm just going to get my tape from Waywack, which I think is where pretty much everybody gets their tape. It is really good. And I'm just going to put a couple of strips of this down. Cut this off. Strip. Cut this off. Now I mark the center of my flap, and this is important because when we go to put our two front pieces on, we want to make sure that it's centered. But also I mark the center of the 5 by 10 piece as well, so we can get it all lined up. So these are going to go wrong sides together, okay? I know that's a little different. We're used to doing right sides together, but we're going to do wrong sides together. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm just going to line this up at the top and line it up here at the bottom, okay? Now, once this is together and laced, I mean, I guess somebody could theoretically take all the laces out and open it up and look at your back side, which if they do that, then, you know, I guess they want to see the inside anyway. So I'm not really worried about it going all the way to the end. So now what we're going to do is we're going to flip this over and we're going to put right sides together, and we're going to make sure that our center mark here is lined up with the very edge of this flap, okay? We're going to go ahead and we're going to do the same thing at the top. Make sure that the center is lined up. Okay. Now, you obviously want to make sure it's centered, but I also want to make sure that my grommets are all lined up, because that is actually more important than anything. Okay. And if you're a little off on your grommets, it looks like this one was up a little high. Once you lace it, you're not going to really notice it as much, so I wouldn't stress out about it too bad. It's hard to get everything lined up exactly right all the time. And if you make bags, you know that. Okay. So what we're going to do is we are literally going to stitch all the way around the entire bag. We are going to be able to turn it because we're going to be able to open this up and turn it. So this is going to give us the ability, by having this open, to stitch all the way around without having to worry about leaving a space to turn it. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So now, anytime you deal with a curve, you want to clip the edges so that it turns nicely. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut out some little triangles here. So now I have all my little triangles cut out. so now we're going to turn it. The other thing you want to do is cut your edges here, because okay. All right, so let's turn it. Handy dandy tool here. It's got like a little ball on each side. One ball is bigger than the other, and it works pretty good to get in the corners. Get it all poked out nice. And I know you can use, and there's lots of different things you can use. I like to run it across here as well. Now one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the 5x10 piece. Actually, I sewed it down. You could wait to put that on until you turn it, and then you can put it over your seams. You know, put it on top. I probably should do that. I should have probably done that next time. I'll do that, and it'll kind of hide that. But again, this is going to be laced up. You're not going to see. It's probably not the end of the world. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to top stitch this all the way around. And then we're going to attach it to the back side of the bag. Okay. I'm going to increase my stitch length here, and just make sure. Another thing about this ultra leather, it really turns well. I mean, it's so soft that it really is nice to work with. And you know, the curve I think might be a little intimidating. You think, gosh, this is such a curvy bag, but the fact that the curve is so gradual makes it actually very easy to sew. Even the gusset was easy to sew on. So Mrs. H, she did a great job with the pattern and knowing that. I don't know how they know that, these pattern makers. They're so smart when it comes to that kind of thing. Okay. All right. So now I'm just gonna top stitch around the, I'm not gonna do the top because we're gonna be sewing the top to the top of the bag. Stitched, and you know, just go slower on your curves, and you'll be fine. Okay, so I have the back of the bag here, and we want to attach the flap to it. Okay, so after thinking about this, and I had already made one of these and I did it right the first time. I don't know why I didn't do it right this time, but you don't, when you sew this flap, when you sew these two pieces onto the flap, you do not want to sew the top. You want to leave that open, flip it, top stitch, and then just baste this close. Because if you stitch it and then you try to stitch it on your bag, you're losing that seam allowance, and now the front flap isn't going to cover the full front of the bag. So anyway, make sure that you do not, when you're sewing right sides together, don't stitch up here, just wait until you turn it, baste it, okay? Okay, so now it's time to stitch our flap on. I went ahead and I put the entire outside of the bag together. before I put my flap on. And the reason why is because the flap is actually longer than the bag, because it has to go from the back, come around to the front, and then snap here in the front. So honestly, I was afraid that I'd have a better chance of catching my flap when I was stitching the gusset on. So it was just as easy to just wait and do it afterwards. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my flap, I'm gonna put it right sides together with the back of the bag. Okay, so the back is the one with the pocket. Here's your flap, right sides together. Make sure you line up your centers. We're gonna go ahead and clip that on. And if you did your seam allowances right, it should match up perfectly, which it does. Okay, so using a 3/8 inch seam allowance, I'm gonna go ahead and stitch the flap on, and then we're going to put the lining in, and then I'm gonna show you how to make the lace and do the lace on the front, okay? Okay, so we have our bag completed, and what we need to do now is make the lace. So because this ultra leather has kind of got like a fuzzy backing on it, I don't want to have two edges or even one raw edge showing. But something small like this, obviously you can't sew right sides together and turn. I mean, I guess you could, but I'm not about ready to do that. It's way too much work. So what I'm going to do is I cut a 3/4 inch piece, and I cut it 30 inches long. Now this one's not 30 inches long because I'm just going to show you, I've already made the lace, but I'm going to show you how I did it. So I put 1/4 inch double-sided tape on both sides. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to peel one side off, and I'm going to fold it up to the other, just make sure you can see that, fold it up to the other side. Not all the way, but just to the other side of the tape. So essentially, this is what's happening. I'm just folding this up to where the next tape begins. I guess that's the best way to put it. Okay, so I'm going to do that all the way down. So essentially I'm folding it up 1/4 inch. That's probably an easier way to put it. Okay, so then what I'm going to do is take the double-sided tape off this side and fold it over on the right side of the side I just folded. So I'm just going to fold this over like this, okay? So all I'm doing is I'm taking this and I'm just folding it down on itself. Okay, I'm going to do that all the way down. Sorry, I know this is such a small piece, it's hard to see. Okay, so now what I have is on the wrong side, you can see an edge, raw edge. On the right side, essentially, there's two good edges. So what I'm going to do is sew down the middle of this entire piece. Now, the foot on my machine, I have a walking foot machine, but the middle section, the middle foot, part of the foot, is 1/4 inch wide. So what I'm going to do is just line this up right in the middle. But I'm not going to start at the beginning. I'm going to give myself a little bit of leeway because in order to hold it straight, I've got to grab the back. So I'm just going to put it on a little bit longer top stitch, and I'm going to go all the way down the center of this and sew that, okay? All right, so that is done. So I'm just going to cut my thread here. the other side where I gave myself a little bit of leeway, I'm just going to cut that off. And now what I have is a lace that is on the right side has two good edges. Of course, the back side you see a raw edge, but we're not worried about the back side because we're not going to see the back side. Okay, so once you have your 30-inch piece done, I'll go ahead and show you how to lace it up. Okay, so here's my long piece, here's my flap done, ready to go. And if you look at the picture, our inspiration piece, let me put this on top here for just a second. You'll see that, first of all, the lace is laced in the same direction each time. It comes out of the top, and the right side, when I'm looking at the picture, the right side's coming out first. The left side is underneath, the right side's on top. So I want to be consistent with that. The other thing is that it always comes from behind. So it laces up and it goes behind. It laces up and it goes behind. It doesn't lace up and go straight in. So let me show you what I mean by that. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start from underneath and we're going to come up on each side. We'll make sure we're about even here. Okay, so what I want to do, I always want to put my left in first, but I'm not going to go in from the top. The reason why we left this gap here and we didn't put the grommets all the way through the entire flap is because we want to go underneath and come up. Okay, so then we're going to put this piece, we're going to come underneath and come up. Okay, so now we're going to start with this piece first. We're going to twist it so you don't see the wrong side, and we're going to come underneath and come up. This piece, same thing. Underneath and come up. Okay, so you see how that's doing? Start with the left side. Make sure it's twisted in the right direction here. Underneath and come up. Okay, isn't that pretty? God, that's so pretty. Oh, I love that. Especially in this, I guess you call it ice blue or silvery blue. So pretty. Okay. Same thing here. Just got to kind of maneuver it a little bit. Now, if you do this and you decide you're going to use the large size, your piece of lace obviously is going to probably need to be more than 30 inches. So just make sure you take that into consideration because you don't want to run out of lace at the very end. Okay. Isn't that gorgeous? Oh, I love that. Okay, so then what I do is I'm just gonna put one end in the other. Now, I know hand sewing, you know, the minute you say something to somebody about hand sewing, they go, no, I don't want to do it. But I am going to just take a needle and thread and just kind of put a little stay stitch right here. Now and then I'm going to tuck these ends in this last grommet. Now I am going to put a tassel on the bottom of this, so the tassel will wrap around this. Now you don't have to put a tassel. You could just leave it. You could just leave it like that. I mean, that would be pretty as well. Maybe I'll do that. Either way, I would go ahead and just put a needle and thread through here and just do a couple of stitches just to hold it tight before you tuck these ends in. Okay? Okay, so I have my needle and thread going, and what I'm doing is I'm making sure that when I take the stitch, I'm going in one of the existing holes so that it blends in with what's already there. Okay, so you see there's a hole right here where my sewing machine went in when it made the stitch down the middle. I'm going to go through there. Okay, come out this other side. And then when I go through the bottom one, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to make sure I come up in an existing hole, which that is not one. Let's see. I have to maneuver with it a little bit. Okay. Right there. Okay, there we go. Come up through the hole. Okay, and then I'm going to go down and come up on the other side and make sure I get in the hole, one of the holes. And this takes, it takes a little maneuvering, but you can do it. Let's see, there we go. Okay. So now, if I try to take these apart, I can't. It's just enough to hold it. So I'm going to go ahead on the back side of this. I'm going to go through here, but not this top one, and just make a little knot to hold this tight. Okay. Do one more, make sure it stays. Okay. Pull it good and tight. Clip it. Pull this. Now I'm going to tuck my ends in. And if your ends are too long, you can cut them shorter. And I actually found that my awl was a very big help with this. I'm getting it in there. Just be careful you don't go through the back side of your flap. Also, when you do your flap, don't forget to put your snap on the other side of your magnetic snap. Otherwise, you're going to have to take it apart, and that's not fun. As we all know, I'm sure we've all been there. I'm going to turn this and get this other angle. And I am trying to get it in behind this. There we go. Let's see if I can get it in there a little more. There we go. This one in a little more. And actually, I kind of like that. I don't think I'm going to put a tassel. I think I'm just going to leave that. That's kind of pretty. The picture, our inspiration, you can see it has a tassel. But you know, this ultra leather, again, the back side's kind of a fuzzy, so if you do a tassel, you're going to see that. And actually, I don't think I want to do it. I think I'm just going to leave it just like that. So let's look at the bag. Here, let me lift you up. Okay. I have my handle gun. I did an adjustable strap on it. So go ahead and snap that. Strap on. And get the strap on. Oh, wow. All right, y'all. Look, isn't that just so pretty? That is so pretty. Here, let me get my strap twisted the right way. There we go. So, this crossbody, let me really lift you up so you can see. Well, you're gonna have to go down some, aren't you? There we go. And of course the strap is adjustable. And I have a nice slip pocket here in the back. And I didn't put a magnetic strap on that, or excuse me, a magnetic clip on that snap. I just felt like easy access. It's against your body anyway, so somebody's probably not going to reach in there, but if I want to put my phone in there, it'd be easy to do that, get it in and out. So there you have it. Very nice, very, very nice. So on the inside, I ended up using just a cotton that I think I got at Joann or Hobby Lobby or something like that. I do have a slip pocket on one side. I have a zipper pocket on the other side, and I always put a key fob in the purses I make. I never really thought about a key fob until I had bought a Dooney & Bourke, and it had a key fob, and ever since then I've been hooked on key fobs. It's just, you don't lose your keys. I mean, it's fantastic. And so whenever I make myself a purse now, or whenever, even if somebody doesn't ask, they get a key fob. So there we go. All right. So visit my website, simplyclassic.net. I'll have obviously this purse for sale, and if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. And I have a special order on another purse, so I'm going to go ahead and see what I can do to get that going and give you guys another video. So until then, happy sewing.